So this is, I guess, part one. This is post Hawaii and before the system. Some of my earlier memories, and the more I think about it, I keep going back into this trance of, surreality of thinking about all these memories and more that I thought I'd forgotten. Childhood before going to Hawaii was, pretty simple. I was my single mom. It was me and my two sisters. Well, I guess single is as much as say so. My mom always spent all her time in her room on AOL back when that was a thing. Dating online. Always random guys in and out. I remember my great grandma, because my mom wouldn't let us leave the room until she woke up, would end up sneaking us out and teaching my older sister how to cook, or cooking us. I remember oatmeal with raisins, which was, I know it's ridiculous, but it's one of the fondest memories of my great grandma, is her teaching us how to cook. I don't know why she always slept on the couch, like my great grandma, till the day she died. And I remember the day she died because we were coming back from school. I remember seeing the ambulance there, and then coming back to the house, my great grandma not being there, which that was kind of the beginning of the whole end. So then there was my grandma. She was an RN. She worked at night or all day, so she was sleeping at the house. So she always had this whole wall full of VHSs. And I remember she'd come and wake us up, and we'd go down there and all climb in her bed, pick out a movie. Me, my two sisters used to just hop up in the bed and watch all these random movies. And she was one of the sweetest humans and one of the biggest lights in my world at the time. I remember she always pushed for me and my mom to have a relationship all the way up until the day she died. She used to, when we go down and hang out and watch movies, she would hide money around her room, and we'd go scavenger hunting for it. And I remember those brief moments every time we got it throughout the day, when she would wake up and come get us to watch a movie. It was one of the brightest parts of the day. With my dad, some of my earliest memories was going to his house. He always had random cars out in the yard. He's a mechanic. He's a mechanic as long as I've known him, and that he was working on. And I remember, my dad, I love him to death. He's always been like a kid himself, So I remember playing hide and go seek with him, and he'd be hiding up in the tree or up on the roof just to scare us, or him showing us with the hairspray and the little flame of how to get spiders. I know, not so safe, but it was my dad. My mom, I'll wait on my mom until I go into further memories before going to the islands. But I can tell you, with my dad, I remember him not being there as much. At the time, I didn't understand it when I was a kid. And as I got older, I realized that the memories I had of my mom waking me up in the middle of the night to go on a random road trip where we would drive for hours. And I remember we would eat beef jerky. That was our biggest thing. She'd always give us beef jerky. We'd be out in the middle of nowhere, some random gas station somewhere. Didn't realize at the time, but it was because my dad was supposed to come get us. So she would end up waking us up and taking us on a long road trip, so he couldn't have us. I don't know if it was a control thing or what it was, but when I was younger, it was pleasant. It was one of the fond memories I had of my mother, which is not a bunch. My uncle, my mother's brother. Like I said, there's one memory I want to share. I remember we went over to his house for 4th of July. He was a firefighter, and he wanted to show off with shooting all these fireworks off. He was off duty, and I remember him setting the whole field on fire. So now all the fire department shows up, and my uncle now has to gear up to run out to this field to put out this massive fire in the center of the field that he set fire. And I remember, with that, just being hilarious. My uncle's always been a good old boy, and tattoos. I remember he used to have the Looney Tunes on his arms as firefighter for a long time. My cousins on My dad's side, I don't remember seeing him a lot whenever I was a kid, unfortunately. Not before coming back from the islands. Uh, I remember my grandmother going to her house and going for Easter and our games to where we would, end up playing Secret Santa, or like this game where you end up like picking a present and you can steal other people's presents, and it's kind of adapted over the years. But that side of my family, my dad's side, was a lot more of the what you'd figure be the as normal as you can get normal on the surface family. Now they all had their problems underneath, but for the most part, that was my most memories when I was younger. Is that normality, that true sense of family with them. As in my uncle, it was and my mom, and it was wholesome because they were, as I recognized later on in life, like accepting. A little rough around the edges, good old boys, have a good time, enjoy life. Um, so fast forward a little bit to get into how I wound up in Hawaii, because you have the brief overlay. I had my mom that always had guys over her kids. Well, after my great grandma passed away, my mom met this guy online. His name was Christopher. He came over from the islands on leave. He was in the U.S. military. He seemed great at the time. Really played with us as kids. Super playful. Seemed like a great human at the time. And my great grandmother died. My mother, being my mom, chose to go get married to this guy during my great grandma's funeral. So shortly after she got married, I remember mom coming to pick me and my sisters up out of school. I'm in first grade, as we're going to Hawaii. So we end up flying to Hawaii. I remember getting to Kaneohe Marine Base, walking in, and Chris totally flipped the script. So he went from this really amazing human whenever he visited us to this demon. Immediately when I walked in, you're asking if you want to play, and you don't touch that. You need to go to your room right now. And we weren't there long. I remember, like, you figure, 7, 8 years old, I guess 6 or 7 years old, cleaning the room with the toothbrush is not that bad, but he finds a speck of dirt. He would slam everything on the ground. He would take a bed frame over my back. I remember him taking belts to such a degree and different things to me that the neighbors heard screaming, called the MPs, and he went to jail for 24 hours and came back out and got it 10 times worse. As a kid, I didn't understand this, and I tried to talk to my mom. She didn't want to hear. All she cared about was this guy. I would end up going to school, asking for a pass and trying to hide up underneath the building. And I remember this kid seeing me and being like, "There's a kid under the building, there's a kid." And then the fire department comes, and then my mom comes, and I remember screaming and crying, saying, I don't want to go back, and she would act like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong with you. I have no idea what you're talking about. And I remember just pushing further back into this building, trying to get away from the people trying to grab me. I remember they grabbed me, and my mother the whole time acting like nothing's happening, everything's fine. I remember coming back because I didn't understand it, so I started getting angry. And instead of taking us from this and being a mother, she decides to take me and tie me up like a pig and shove pills down my throat, trying to get me to calm down, sedate me. Don't remember much past that point. I remember that happening a couple times. I remember my stepdad started getting to a point after the MPs came the first time to where instead of just blatantly beating us, he started using psychological and sense of fitness. I remember he used to pay my little sister to make my older sister do push-ups. Not too bad, push-ups. I remember sitting doing the motorcycle with cans, your legs are shaking, and you hit the ground crying, and he would beat you until you'd stand back up. I remember him locking me out the house for the first time, 6, 7 years old. And my mom coming back, she was mad they locked me outside. I couldn't get in, I kept trying. So instead I started running around the neighborhood. I remember grabbing gas and lighting it on fire in somebody's garage. I remember it started getting dark, so I ran into his park, and I remember people looking for me, and I climb up in this tree house, and I'm sitting here hiding, and I hear people, and I see flashlights. I remember them pulling me out, and I remember being so terrified just to go back. And then he tried killing me twice. He ended up, the first time I remember being in the hallway, and there's furniture in the hallway, and I can't remember what I did, but I remember him coming at me with a knife. I remember being underneath of all these things and just pushing back, trying to get away from him, and him grab me and put me up against the wall. And the second time, he had a knife, and he was pushing down on my wrist, and we were in the kitchen. And I remember screaming and trying to get away. And now I think about it, I'm 6, 7 years old. I'm not that strong. If he wanted to, he probably could have. But I ended up pulling away, and he cut the tops of my hands. And it took this for the system to finally take us. At the time, I didn't realize what that meant. So I go to school, and I tell them about him trying to kill me. Next thing you know, they're making calls. Me and my sisters are in the office, and I remember my older sister screaming at me the whole time. We're in this van to the police station. How it's all your fault. It's all your fault. And that haunted me for a long time. For a long time, her saying that over and over again haunted me. Well, we end up going to the police station. I remember being so upset and just crying and screaming, and them trying everything to calm me down. It didn't work. Well, they ended up moving me to the holding foster home with me and my sisters. We ended up going there. It's like a bunch of rooms, bunk rooms, and I wouldn't go into the room and sleep. I just kept crying how I wanted my mom, just over and over again, which is crazy because even after everything that happened, I still just wanted my mother. So that whole night I sat in the corner just sobbing, and I ended up urinating myself because I don't know, I was scared. Cried myself to sleep and wept myself in the corner. Well, the next day, the caseworker at People's Health comes in and promises me and my little sisters, or little sister and older sister, that, you guys will be back together. We're just going to take him someplace and we'll bring him right back. And then I remember sitting in an empty room in a hospital with just a bed in the middle of this empty room. And then I remember a doctor taking me out and then trying to touch me, had me stripped down. I remember losing my mind and just screaming and yelling. So they threw me in this padded cell. And as I went calm down, they ended up tranking me. So, imagine this. You get taken from your parents, or your mom and your stepdad. Get thrown into a place that's dark, and within the first 72 hours, you're left to cry in the corner, to sit in your own urine, because you wanted your family, to being put in an empty room as if you did something wrong in a psych ward. I remember having this Batman blanket I kept forever. It's the one thing I had from my family. I carried for most of my time through the system until I lost it on the streets. But yeah, went to the psych ward, and that was before my first foster home. I remember visits from my stepdad and my mom. I remember them bringing in fucking, what's that? Jar Jar Binks toys. My favorite character was Jar Jar Binks. That's a little bit before I wound up in the system and how I got into the system. And then the first 72 hours in the system. I may have to go back and remake these, but I'm just doing it as I think about them. I don't know how to structure these. I don't know how to tell these stories without it being a clutter or spending hours doing it. But here's another one down. So I'm going to try to make more. My stomach's a little turning. I'm going to get into this town and get checked into my hotel room, well, hostel. And then try to relax and get some food tonight. So, presently still in the Philippines. I'm supposed to fly to Bangkok in 2 days, so I'm going to try to make another one of these videos in the meantime. But I feel like I should end on some type of light note. Here, this is my light note right now. The small things in life. Like 2 kids playing. Instead of looking at a phone like in the States, he's chasing with the stick. The small things are the small things in life. But till the next one.